Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon. Listen in as him and other members of the J Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
And good morning. It's Jonathan Harmon with J Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And this is This Week in Real Estate. And I hope that you have all successfully and as comfortably as possibly navigated Snowpocalypse 2024. And I'm going to call it Snowpocalypse 2024 until we have another one. So if we have another one, then that'll be Snowpocalypse 2.0 2024. It's a lot of numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it.
I will tell you this, the kids are out of school again today, and I'm like, oh, please go back to school. And so teachers, you guys out there that do that work every single day, I love y'all, and I appreciate y'all, and I have been y'all, and I don't really want to do that again. But it is different when it's your own. I don't know if you know that, but like, your own kids after a while. I knew that.
I used to substitute teach.
Yeah, it's different because, like, I don't know. It's just different. Parents, I know you feel me. I know you're with me.
I think other kids listen to their teachers and mind their teachers just a smidge better than their parents.
Maybe. And if they don't, you have a very set disciplinary action.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
Yeah, and you just don't have that necessarily with your own kids. But
yeah.
Anyways, that's my opinion. It ought to be yours. So anyway, I'm happy to be out and doing stuff. Of course, we drove every single day in the Snowpocalypse, but interesting. So this is obviously a real estate podcast. My friend Grant Hammond posted something that was a very interesting perspective, and that is that basically we lost essentially a week of, really more like 10 days probably, of showings, contracts, offers, just activity just in general in January. And sometimes we have a short memory as a market, and so people will look back in June and be like, oh, look, January numbers were super low. Right. And a lot of it will actually show up in February, because that's when February and March, it's when contracts that would have been written mid-January would actually close. Oh, the market's down because of...
That'll look good in the following year when people are comparing numbers, though.
Yes, and it'll look like...
like, I did so good.
And it'll look like the market has trended downward. And so people react a certain way when that happens with pricing and things like that. So we got to keep in mind why it would have trended downward. And that's a very important thing that we can't forget. You know what I mean? Perspective that we can't forget. So hopefully people will keep their memories long enough to do that. But I'm here with Michelle. Michelle is part of the J Harmon Home Team, and she is... been doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes and marketing and things like that. And we actually have a topic today that you're more of an expert on than I am, and I'm excited
That's so rare, and I'm just giddy inside thinking about that.
I'm excited to learn a little bit. I know that what we're going to talk about exists, and I know kind of a basic idea behind it, but I don't know exactly the process. So that's pretty exciting to learn that. Before we do that, though, we do want to hear from Mr. Bryan Nale over at Primis Mortgage, which dovetails perfectly into what our topic is today.
Indeed.
And let's hear from him and what all he does over there at Primis.
Hey, my name is Bryan Nale. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Primis Mortgage. I want to tell you that I absolutely love being a member of the Spread the Positive Network. It's such a great mission and helps bring so much positivity to our community. It's truly be a pleasure to be a part of what they do. There are a lot of ways to navigate financing a home, and in markets like this, having the advice of a trusted local professional is key to making sure you get the right advice for your specific circumstances. Whether you're interested in the purchase of a new home, second home, or have a need for a refinance, I'd love to earn your trust. If I can help you nail your mortgage, call me at 615-243-3976 or visit nailyourmortgage.com.
Primis Mortgage is a subsidiary of Primis Bank, a member FDIC, equal housing opportunity. As always, all loans are subject to approval. Primis Mortgage, NMLS number 1894879.
Bryan, man, we love you, dude, and we love how you like to hand out advice and keep people going the right direction, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, with interest rates going up like they have over the last couple years, there's been a lot of conversation about, and we're going to get into some of the market forces, the wrinkles, if you will, about that at the end, but there's been a lot of talk about assumptions and how does somebody assume someone else's loan and keep the rate that they got, whatever, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago even, because it's significantly less than where our current interest rate is. And so it's very attractive to take over someone's loan rather than to go get your own.
Correct.
And Michelle, you just did this.
I did.
You did a loan assumption. So walk us through what led to that decision, and then just kind of the process that was involved, because it took significantly longer than I thought it would.
Yes,
and I know it took significantly longer than you thought it would. And Bryan gave you some advice and some where to turns and all that kind of stuff. So if we can kind of sum up some of that stuff, we can maybe help somebody along.
Well, I was under pressure because of some other things to do something about the loan, my house loan. It was, the ownership was like my ex-husband and I were sharing it, blah, blah, blah.
So
short version of that.
Super normal. As part of a divorce decree, whoever retains the house has to get the other person off of the note, and there's usually a time frame involved.
Yes,
right?
And we had an unusually long time frame, but that's what worked.
And
for
normally
us.
that getting them off of there is either a refinance, or it's selling the house.
Right.
And in your scenario, neither of those was really an attractive option.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, I did work with Bryan leading up to that. And I was like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a loan for an affordable mortgage payment for me each month. And with the interest rate, I mean, it was going to be a lot of money. So
what was your old interest rate?
The one before, 3.5%.
And now when you looked at refi, it would have doubled.
Been closer to, I think, 8 at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Closer to 8.
Which takes your payment and it almost doubles your payment.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yes. So I had talked to Bryan and we talked about a bunch of different things, how's your credit? How's this? How's that? My credit was good. It was good when I started this whole process. And, but I was at a thing at Keller Williams, one of the team meetings, and the Primis folks got up and spoke, and Bryan was there, but one of the Primis folks talked about assumable loans. And I was like, oh, they were like, yeah, this is going to get popular based on the rate increases and the interest rate increases. And I was like, huh. She was like, but it will only work on an assumable loan if the person who owns it has an assumable loan. And assumable loans, from what I understand, are only FHA and VA loans. Correct.
Yeah, most conventionals are not, unless there's some oddball product that somebody specifically got. Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm pretty certain, because my ex-husband did the house on his own, the financing. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he got an FHA loan. And so I looked into that. I got into the paperwork. I contacted the bank, everything, and it was assumable. And I was like, that's awesome. So it took some work, but I had to figure out who to call and what to do. And to start the process, getting a hold of the right person at the bank
always
was nuts. That it was so hard. And like, so this loan is with Regions Bank, and Regions has one loan assumption team in the United States for the whole country. So they get backed up really easily. And so
now, Regions originated the loan, or is Regions who's servicing it?
Okay, so when you assume
that matters, right?
When you assume a loan, you stay with the same bank
that's currently servicing it.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
So, like in my case, my loan originated with one place, it got sold to another place, and then it got sold again. And so currently PNC services it. So is that who I would?
PNC would be who you would, like if somebody was coming to assume your loan.
They'd go through PNC.
They would go through PNC.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I started that process. I finally got a hold of the right person. And they sent me they sent me an email. It looked, simple. That was not it. It ended up being a stack of paperwork that I had to print and send via FedEx, like that was 1.5 inches thick. I mean, it was a lot of paper. And it had everything. Like when people say, oh, they want my firstborn child, that's how I felt. I was like, oh, they want everything. And I talked to some people and they said, well, that's because they do not want to give you
that's what I was
3.5% interest rate.
And you think about it from a revenue standpoint, it makes a whole lot more sense to them to just refinance you. They get the origination cost, they get a higher interest rate, all of those things. So they're not going to make it simple for it to be assumable.
They make it so you have to jump through hoops, and then you jump through smaller hoops, and then you jump through hoops of fire that are tiny.
And you follow up, and you
keep going,
and you follow up because they're not going to push it along.
Yeah, no. And I basically, when I started it, I told the people I had a deadline. I was like, I don't know if you need to know this or not, but I've got a deadline. I've got to do this by this date. I cannot keep dragging this out for months on end. So anything you can do to speed this along, just let me know. Like if I need to do something,
but they're not going to do that.
Me know.
You have to keep following up.
Yeah, that's what you need to do. And so I filled out the initial paperwork, and I thought, awesome. I sent them so much stuff that there's no way they'll need anything else. That's wrong. They, with a fine-tooth comb, went through every single bank transaction I had made in like the past 6 months or a year. If I deposited more than, I want to say it was either $500 or $1,000, I had to explain why or what it was.
Source the money.
If I spent more than that at one time, they wanted to know where that went and what it was for. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, on some of it. And they were like, that's fine. If you don't know, just say, I don't remember. But then it was like, don't do that too much. And I was like, okay.
You're only allowed to not remember.
Like once. Yeah. So it was a lot of paperwork, and I started the process. I want to say I called them originally the last of August, and I sent the paperwork back to them, all the big thick stack, in like early September. And then I closed on December 15th. I mean, it took ages.
So one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and we're going to go through several reasons why this may not be as simple as people think. One of the thoughts that I had when I first kind of learned about assumptions was maybe the if folks have a low interest rate and we go into a market like we are now, then maybe that's a marketing piece, right? You can buy this house and you can assume a mortgage for 3% or 2% or whatever, and that becomes an incentive to buy this house. A couple of problems with that. One is the length of time it takes to do it. Right?
Yes.
That's so closing a deal in 30 days
not gonna happen.
The other problem that you run into, and in your particular case, this wasn't as big of a deal because of the way that your divorce decree was set up, and that is that if you got a rate 4 years ago and it was super low, and that's what you want to assume, the other thing that happened in those 4 years is that the value of that house went way up.
Correct.
And so because of that, if you got a $200,000 note and that house is worth $400,000, where's the other money coming from? So if you're bringing in equity, like you sold a house, you're bringing in equity,
Right.
you can solve that. Otherwise, you're going to end up carrying a second mortgage on it, most likely. And so people would have to get a HELOC or something like that to make up that difference. And so you still end up with a higher rate.
They told me that made it much easier on mine because we didn't have to deal with all that.
Right.
And so we never even talked about it because it didn't apply
Exactly.
to me.
But but for a purchase situation,
Right.
the house is worth $400. The assumable note is only worth $200.
Yeah.
So where's the other $200 come from?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I really don't know. I didn't check into it.
Well, it's either cash or it's a second mortgage.
Yeah.
And so then that mortgage, in order to purchase, has to become a second position, and
Right.
not a whole lot of folks necessarily want to do that. So you got a kind of a specialty product. So that presents a challenge. The other thing, and this is what a lot of people don't really put a lot of thought into, is because conventional mortgages are not typically assumable.
Right.
You're looking at FHA. Well, the other thing that happened 4 years ago, 5 years ago, is that there just plain weren't a whole lot of FHA deals getting accepted because of the competitive market that we were in.
Yep.
The number of FHAs that got accepted went way down, and almost everything was financed conventional. So there's just not a ton of them available.
Right.
Not here in this county anyway.
Right. The house, when my ex-husband and I were married and we got into my current house, that was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, 3.5%. It was FHA and assumable.
And that was right before everything went totally bananas.
Yes.
It was starting to get bananas,
yes.
but they were like
So
green,
we were
unripe bananas. You know what I mean?
We were still, like, I would find something and call our agent and say, hey, we want to put an offer on this house. And by the time he got to it and started writing the offer, the house was already under contract.
Mm-hmm. That was
brutal.
Normal, but it wasn't like the peak of crazy.
Right.
I mean, it got crazier, which...
Well, I'm glad I didn't experience that because you know how much patience I have.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Well, that is very interesting. And so it's all said and done. Everything, you've met your obligation. The house is 100% in your name.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. That's exciting.
You.
That's an accomplishment for sure.
Very, very happy about that. I wanted to just go out in the street and be like, happy Dan.
What fees did they charge for the I'm curious about that.
I only got charged for like it was a lot of miscellaneous, like the notary, the title company to process it. It ended up costing me like $1,400.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay.
I didn't have to put any money down. I didn't have to do all that, but that may not apply in every situation. For sure.
But it's not the cost of like a refi. Like a refi, you're several $1,000s.
No, I didn't have to do that. Originally, they sent me some paperwork, the settlement statement stuff to look over, or maybe it was probably
a worksheet.
Yeah, something like that. And I looked over that and I was like, wait, how much do I need to bring to the table? Because this is saying like 4 times more than I thought. And he was like, no, that's not the final paperwork. I was like, oh, thank you.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was only that. And I was like, man, this really worked out. I was so happy that, because I don't always go to the KW team meetings, I was really super happy I went that day and heard about that, because it really did save me on everything,
Well, the reality is, in your situation and the way things kind of worked out and the timing and everything, you probably would have sold the house.
Yeah, I would have had to,
Yeah.
but what was I going to buy? Where was I going to go?
Exactly.
That was what I kept thinking. And I was really thankful that when all this happened, I was working in the real estate business, because I had a lot of resources. I had Bryan, who was extremely helpful, and I had you, just to say, okay, Jonathan, is this right?
For me to go, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't,
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, you're really good at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I also, the other thing was, and I know I've said this already, but like, I knew the person that I was assuming the loan from, because that person has to put in some work.
Interesting.
They have papers that they need to sign, and because I like to be in control of things, as you know, I was like, okay, here's the paperwork. Did you get that? Have you signed that? Did you get that notarized?
So there's a lot of collaboration between
Yes.
the previous mortgage holder and then the
Yes. And I don't know. I would assume if it was with an agent, like I would have spoken with his agent if he had that, but I mean, we just did our own thing. But
Right. But either way, there's work involved on both sides.
There is.
So if you're selling that house and you do market it as an assumable mortgage,
know.
understand that you're opening up the you've got to do the work too.
Yes.
In order to get the deal done.
And I would also say, as a word of advice to the agents, like, be patient. This is not going to be a
30-day
cash to close, 10-day, 2-week closing. It takes time. They go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm digging this idea. About halfway through, I was like, this is taking forever. And I am an instant gratification. Like, do it now, get it done, check it off.
Yeah.
And so that was a struggle. But I'm like, I've got a mortgage payment that most people would be ecstatic to have at this point.
In this current climate.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad I enjoyed you going through the process, if that makes any
so
sense.
you could learn.
Yeah, I learned a little bit about it. It's an area that I've never had any experience in it. So it was good to kind of hear about that. I assumed that it would take a long time, which it did. So, and you always have to, well, why does it take so long? Well, you got to look at the motivation, right? They're not motivated to get that thing done.
Correct. And they only, like Regions. Regions is a huge bank. They only have one assumption department in the nation.
Because it's just not a huge thing.
It's not.
Yeah.
It might become one, but
no, I would think that if it was going to become big, it would already. Do you know what I mean?
And here's the other thing. I started out with one guy representing Regions for the assumption, and at some point in the process, I got handed off to another guy. And the other guy was like, hey, I'm new to the assumption team, so we're going to learn together.
And you went, fantastic.
Well, no, I was generally I would think that. But I was like, okay, cool. That way I don't have any dumb questions, because he doesn't know what he's doing either. So I can ask whatever dumb questions I want.
That's a fair point. Yeah, you're right.
And so I threw a bunch of stuff at him, and it makes me even happier because I'm like, this was a great learning experience for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And now I bet he's like, a little more stable and knows what he's doing.
When I first got into this business, I did some short sales, and that was right when short sales were really becoming a thing. And similar situation, right? It would get handed off. That person was new in the department. I mean, it was a miserable department to work in, I'm sure.
Oh,
because you never talked to somebody that was like
happy to do it.
Yeah, ever, right? And I remember like my best advice out of that, and I would assume, I love using that word in this context.
Assume, yes,
is going to be a similar situation for here abundantly, is that when something just doesn't smell right, when it doesn't pass that sniff test, and you don't like the answer that the other person on the other side of the phone is giving you, what I found on short sales, and again, I would think the same thing on something that's unusual like an assumption, is you just say, I don't really like that answer. Is there somebody else I can talk to? And
I'm great at that.
And so I'll never forget. I sat at a dining room table with a lady one time, and we were working a short sale. It was it was her only option, other than to lose the house. And I made a tick mark with every person that I talked to. And in 3.5 hours, we talked to 18 people.
Whoa.
And I it got to the point where they'd put somebody else on the phone, and I would say, okay, are you obligated to read from a script? Because if you are, then you're not the person I need to speak with. So I'm going to save my breath and your time.
Yeah.
And I need you to get me somebody that can think through what we're looking at, because hers was a very odd situation. Here's the thing. The reality is, on assumptions and short sales and all that, they're all unique situations. There's not.
I would say every one of them.
Yeah, there's not this is just a basic whatever. Because there's all backstory and context and everything else that needs to be considered. And so when you have the script reader, it just doesn't work. It doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And so I finally got to the person.
I don't like that anyway.
I don't either. I finally got to the person, and they got a job to do. I get it. I'm not mad at you.
True, but
you're going to waste my time. So get me the person that doesn't. And we finally did, but you have to keep asking.
And it's patience. I saw somebody post on the KW Facebook page, like in the last few days during the snow stuff, right? Snow apocalypse. And they were talking about assumptions, and I posted and I was like, you have to be patient. Being on the side of the person who was doing the assumption, I did it myself. It takes patience. It takes a lot of time. Like that, I think the agents need to know that, as well as the people, the buyers and sellers involved. The agent needs to know that before they agree to do something that's assumable, because it's going to be a lot more of your time. It's going to be a lot more interaction with the people involved.
With the buyer and seller are probably going to interact.
Both sides.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was easy because I just said, hey, this is what we're doing.
Right.
Can you sign this? I'm making this as easy as possible for you. I'm handling it and keeping it on track.
And he has a vested interest in getting it done.
Right. Correct.
We have a mutual goal here, right?
It's tying up his credit to keep it on, on his credit and him paying it. So I'm like, the quicker we get it done, the quicker it's mine instead of yours.
And you can move on and I can move on.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
So,
well, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad you were able to navigate it. I'm glad you were able and willing to share about that.
Yeah.
If you're in one of those life circumstances right now, and you just want some advice, you just want some guidance, we've got the tools, we've got the resources, we have the experience where we can kind of help you with that. Because here's the deal. You didn't really want to sell your house. I mean, I know that there's like, well, what would I do? There's that piece of the motivation, but you also just didn't really want to sell your house.
I didn't. I like my house. I'm there. It's like our tree has been planted.
Yes.
Me and the kids and, my mom, we're all
and so
in the house.
And so it's easy for me to look at somebody and say, well, you're going to have to sell the house.
Yeah,
let's
no.
explore some ways that you don't.
Yeah,
And no, I don't make money doing that, but
that's true.
is that what's best for you? And if it's what's best for you, I'm in, and I'll help
Yeah.
however I can help. Right?
And I do like that about you, Jonathan. In the time that I've worked for you, I've seen that again and again. You will help people. You just have to the people have to just tell you up front
What do you want?
what they've got going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we will rack our brains. I had a meeting this morning with somebody, and as we brainstormed and we unpacked and we went through, and finally we got to this little nugget of information that he shared at the very end of the meeting, and I said, well, there's your answer. And he looks at me and I was like, you do this, this, and this. And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to make anything, so you can like throw me a bone here or there, but other than that, that's your best solution. So we're in the solution finding business.
It's like a giant game of real life Tetris.
Yeah. What fits? That's it.
Like just put it where it goes. Move it along.
That's right.
So.
Well, Michelle, again, I appreciate you sharing all of that. It was exciting and interesting to watch. I'm glad that you did it and not me, because I didn't really want to. Man, that stack of papers, and you're right. They were asking for everything, and again, I think it's to just get some people to quit. Honestly, I am more resilient than I should be on a lot of things. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Is this all you need? I kept saying, is this all you need?
And they would say yes, and then they'd send you more.
Exactly. And
Right.
I'm okay with that. I was like, that little tiny FedEx envelope that you sent me, that's not gonna work. Like, you asked me for a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
You want my Venmo printout? What?
Yeah. And they didn't make you fax it though, right?
Oh, no.
So
FedEx, it had to be a hard copy.
I did a short sale about 3 years ago, which was an odd time to do it, but it was the best solution. And they still had us faxing stuff. And I was like, crap, I don't even know where a fax is.
I don't remember how to do that.
Well, I don't even know where one is.
Right.
Like, I remember people busting them up like on Office Space, So anyway, we got it figured out, obviously. But so I'm glad that they have at least moved past faxing.
Yeah.
I would rather FedEx than fax. I'm just saying.
Seriously. Yeah. It did put me past my print max papers for that month, though. And that bothered me a lot. But
it's all good.
Whatever.
Got to do what you got to do. All right. Well, I appreciate you. If you have questions about assumptions, hit us up. We can at least get you to the right person and answer some pretty basic questions on that. Michelle can answer some more than basic questions. And of course, Bryan can be a resource with that as well. If you've got some needs, if you sat around and looked at Real Tracks over the last week and we're like, okay, it's time to move, and the kids were all over the place and you need more space or whatever, we can help with that. There's actually some really good stuff on the market right now. And as far as mortgages and things like that, of course, Bryan can help. If you sat around for the last week and thought about telling your story, we would love to talk to you here at Spread the Positive and hear those stories, hear those ideas. Sometimes the crazier the idea, the better the podcast. So don't be afraid to throw that out there, and we'll always bounce it around with you. And then on the flip side of that is, if you want to support people telling their stories, we want to talk to you about that as well. We got all kinds of ways for you to jump on the Spread the Positive bandwagon. I don't know why I struggle with that, Trent.
Easy for you to say.
Apparently not. Yeah, I need more coffee, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, let's talk. Let's get some coffee and figure that out. Trent, you got anything back over there?
No, it's good to be back. here in
Yeah.
the studio.
Yeah, this is
Yes,
nice,
it
man.
looks
Talk
so
about an
good.
upgrade, dude.
Yeah,
you did a good job.
Still some tweaking to do, but
Sure.
it's good for a first run. Feeling good about it.
Yeah, I'm looking around and I'm like, there's so much room for improvement,
Yes.
but there's a really good jumping off point.
Bingo.
And hey, that's all we can ask for.
That's right.
Hey, boss, are you going to bring me birthday cookies tomorrow for my birthday?
Happy birthday. Happy early
Son of a-
birthday,
I
Michelle.
thought maybe you'd
Thanks,
forget.
Trent. I'm not going to forget.
Yeah.
I like peanut butter cookies. That's
Peanut
what you
butter
should
cookies.
bring.
All right. I'll see what I can do.
All right, good stuff, y'all.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a good rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye.
Peanut butter cookies.